Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're tackling a reality check that is literally hitting us right in the wallet. The end of cheap tap water. For decades, we've just turned the faucet, paid what's usually our lowest utility bill, and that was that. But behind the scenes, a total financial storm is brewing. We're unpacking some eye-opening new reports from the American Water Works Association and Stanford researchers to see exactly why our water bills are on the verge of an unprecedented surge.
So, here's the multi-trillion-dollar question. Why on earth is the cost of something as basic and essential as tap water projected to just skyrocket over the next 25 years? You're probably thinking, okay, inflation, everything's more expensive right now. But honestly, this goes way beyond normal economic bumps. Tap water costs have actually been outpacing inflation by like 3 times for the last 2 decades. What we're really looking at here is a massive structural shift in the core cost of getting safe drinking water to our homes.
Brace yourselves for this one. The stark reality is that average annual household water bills are projected to shoot up by 126% by 2050. We're talking about a jump from roughly $429 today to nearly $1,000, $969 to be exact. To put that into perspective, for a lot of families, that extra $500 a year is like giving up a couple weeks of groceries. And here's the kicker. That's if local ratepayers, meaning us, are forced to foot the entire bill alone. Oh, and that 126%, that is in real 2025 dollars, so it doesn't even factor in future economic inflation. Yikes.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the new cost era.
You see, we're totally past the days where utilities just dig up a street, swap out some old rusty pipes, and call it a day. According to this massive, forward-looking report by the American Water Works Association, just sustaining safe drinking water between now and 2050 is going to require a $2.1 to $2.4 trillion investment. Trillions, with a T. We're not just maintaining the status quo anymore. The whole scope of water management has completely leveled up. Earlier estimates were way lower because they were mostly just looking at the cost of aging infrastructure. But today, the bill is just so much larger.
Moving right along to Section 2, what is actually driving all these costs?
To make sense of that mind-boggling price tag, we really have to look beneath the surface at the compounding invisible stressors piling up on utilities. They aren't dealing with these headaches one by one, they're getting hit with massive mandates all at the exact same time. First up, they've got to install advanced filtration to scrub out those complex PFAS forever chemicals, and there's a really strict 2029 deadline for that. Then there's the monumental push to rip out every single lead service line across the country, which is a project estimated at over $100 billion on its own. Add in the urgent need to beef up cybersecurity against hackers targeting our water grids, plus the necessity of developing entirely new water sources because, well, the traditional ones are drying up.
And this image right here really nails it. Modern water treatment is definitely not just your grandpa's simple pump and pipe setup anymore. To tackle all these emerging threats, utilities literally have to build vast industrial-scale infrastructure. Things like adding advanced membrane filtration or reverse osmosis just to get rid of PFAS permanently drives up the day-to-day operation costs. You need way more energy, super expensive chemicals, and highly specialized staff just to keep the whole operation running safely.
Okay, Section 3, the climate change factor.
If all those aging pipes and new regulations are our baseline, climate volatility is basically throwing gasoline on the fire. It's a massive cost multiplier, with natural disasters costing the U.S. nearly $3 trillion since 1980, and our traditional water basins facing these severe, prolonged droughts. Utilities are really scrambling. They're being forced to secure our water through incredibly expensive, super energy-intensive alternatives. We're talking building massive desalination plants and highly advanced wastewater recycling systems. Sure, these facilities buy a city water security during a mega drought, but they come with astronomically steep construction and operating costs compared to just pumping traditional surface water.
To show you how this actually hits the real world, let's look at a recent Stanford study of Santa Cruz, California. It's a perfect test case because the city relies heavily on local surface water. Under a moderate climate scenario, they found about 26% of households would face unaffordable water bills. But flip that to a severe dry scenario where they have to aggressively adapt, like building that expensive desalination, and boom, that number jumps to 35%. For the poorest households in that scenario, their median monthly bill could nearly double, shooting straight from $60 up to $111.
Which brings us right to Section 4, the affordability tipping point. Ultimately, all these massive macroeconomic infrastructure costs filter right down to a single family sitting at their kitchen table, staring at a bill. And the projections are pretty grim.
By 2050, if families are forced to carry this burden entirely through local rate hikes, over 37% of U.S. households, that's roughly 53.5 million homes, will be spending more than 1.5% of their total income just to keep the tap running. And for the 21.5% of households hitting that really severe 2.5% threshold, they're going to be facing impossible choices like, do we pay for water, buy groceries, or afford our medication?
There's a quote here from Sarah Fletcher, a senior author on that Stanford study, that just perfectly captures the impossible dilemma city planners are facing right now. She notes that providing reliable, climate-resilient water while simultaneously keeping it affordable for low-income communities is, well, basically becoming mathematically impossible under our current funding models. It's a brutal catch-22. If you build that new plant so the city doesn't run dry, rates skyrocket. But if you don't build it to keep rates low, you risk the entire city running out of water.
Let's dive into Section 5, the $1 trillion gap.
So if local ratepayers simply can't absorb a 126% rate hike without pushing millions into economic hardship, where does the money actually come from? The AWWA data makes the sheer scale of this challenge crystal clear. Right now, utilities spend about $101.6 billion a year on capital projects and operations. But to meet all those compounding demands, the aging pipes, the PFS filtration, the lead removal, the climate resilience, that total annual spending essentially has to double. We need to be hitting $200.3 billion a year by 2050.
And when you isolate just the capital investment piece of that puzzle, the actual money needed to build and replace the physical infrastructure, we are looking at a $56.6 billion annual shortfall right now. To put that into perspective, our current capital spending is roughly $33.6 billion a year. That means we literally need a 168% increase in current funding today just to close this gap and keep our system safe and compliant.
Now, check out this surprising historical fact. Even though water is the second largest infrastructure sector in the United States, it gets the absolute lowest level of federal support. I mean, look at this. A whopping 96.1% of all public spending on water utilities comes from state and local sources. That means local ratepayers. The federal share, a tiny 3.9%. This historical reliance on local funding is exactly why rates are poised to double. The local tax base simply cannot shoulder compounding trillion-dollar costs on its own.
So, what's the game plan here? While recent temporary measures like the bipartisan infrastructure law gave us a really much-needed cash injection, that funding actually expires after 2026. Experts across the board agree that we absolutely need sustained, long-term federal loan programs, things like the state revolving loan funds and WIFIA. These programs offer the low-cost, flexible financing that allows local utilities to spread the cost of, say, a billion-dollar treatment plant out over decades. And honestly, that is the secret sauce to preventing a full-blown affordability crisis for consumers in the decades to come.
As we officially exit the age of cheap water and wake up to this multi-trillion-dollar reality, we're left staring down a really tough question. How in the world do we bridge the gap between the monumental cost of modernizing our infrastructure and the fundamental human right to affordable water? Can we actually afford to let the tap run dry, or is it finally time to fundamentally rethink how we value our most vital resource? Something to chew on next time you pour a glass from the sink. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. See you next time.